All right, we're going to give this a second try today. I really did not get the full screen. The charts, they were all blacked out on the first time I did this about an hour ago. So we're going to try this again. Hopefully I can get this right. I've got a split screen this time. I'm here at the Gingerly Design Studio today filming this. So anyhow, so let us see if I can get this thing right. It says to share my screen. I click that. So let's go to Windows and go to Trading View, which is the program that I use to look at my charts. It shows up. All right. Oh my gosh, it looks like you actually can see this. This is pretty spectacular. Wow. All right, so let's get going. Let us start with the S&P 500. I'm going to look at daily and weekly viewpoints. I like to look at the daily from a very short-term perspective. It shows me where the momentum is going, but on a longer-term perspective, I look at the weekly. I've always referred to it as the less static version of charting. And so I'm going to look at those. I'm going to look at some basic items that I typically get into or that we teach at Best of U.S. Investors. Mark, our technical analysis guru who runs our Platinum channel on the Discord, he puts out a market newsletter each morning on the Discord, as well as we try to email that out to all of our subscribers, along with a watch list at the beginning of the week for swing trade opportunities, along with Friday's Platinum discussion and so on. So I'm going to use his formula or his process of how he looks at charts. So it gives you an idea of how we are looking at charts, both from a short-term, intermediate, and long-term perspective. So this is the S&P 500. And if you can't see this for some reason, please put something in the chats that lets me know that you can't see this chart. Right now I have the SPX, which is the S&P 500. It's a daily chart. And what I'm seeing is you got this yellow line, that is your 20-period moving average. And it has the market as of today is moving between the 20 and the 9-period moving average. The 9-period or 9-day simple moving average, in this case, this is daily chart. It's squished in between here. If I'm looking at my oscillators like the MACD has been pointing down since roughly the 17th of July and is continuing to look like it's furthering. The histogram, though, is flattening out a little bit for the last 3 days, which is semi-positive. But right now, I look at this from a short-term or 15-day period, and right now, what this is telling me that is S&P 500 is basically in a mode of indecision. Are we going to go up? Are we going to go back down? That kind of thing. Where is support in this? So there is the Bollinger Band, which they're starting to come together a little bit here. And there's a lot of buyers, potential buyers in this area who say, hey, if it comes down towards, that 54.33 to 54.70 range, I'd be interested in being a buyer as long as the other elements meet up as well. There's an enormous amount of buying opportunity potential, or people see big amount of buyers potential around the 5,200 mark, which would be pretty significant drop if you ask me in the SPX or S&P 500. And of course, you got your 200-day simple moving average, which is we were back there around April. So that'd be a pretty hefty retracement. When I look at this, just right off the bat, I go from here to here. I would not be surprised if we saw anywhere between a 30 and 50% retracement, which would probably put it right in this area around 53.75 range. So that's a daily. I'm not really excited about this because this continued downturn, it's below the 9, it's challenging the 20, and we'll see where it closes today. If I look at a weekly chart of this, I am, in a different point of view, is I'm above that 9-period moving average. But last week was a pretty substantial week. And something to recognize is that there are three companies who represent basically 34-35% of the overall market capitalization rate of the S&P 500. That's Apple, Nvidia, and Microsoft. And depending on the day and depending on the stock price of those companies, they can shuffle around. But Apple typically is the number one company. So when those companies move, they represent 35% of the movement of the S&P 500 as of last week. That's a pretty big chunk in a very small group of companies, but also in one sector. And so that to me is something to respect and keep an eye on. But right now on a weekly chart, we're still above the 9, we're still above the 20. There's a lot of potential buyers down in this area between 5,000 and was about 5,300 or so. So there is that potential. If we saw a pullback and blow through the 9 and we hit that 20, you're going to probably see some buying in that area. If we were to get down to this area, this is where I think this puts an enormous amount of pressure from a Federal Reserve standpoint to consider, how do I loosen up money? How do I make money cheaper? How do I get the economy flowing again? Because that move from where we're at to the 20 is a pretty big wealth eraser. You get down around the Bollinger Band, which some of the option market gurus are talking about, that could be a possible pushing point for the Federal Reserve to have to move rates onto the lower side. And in my opinion, if we get down around 5,000, to keep this economy at least moving forward, they would basically make an aggressive move anywhere between, my opinion, 50 to 100 basis points would be in a short-term move, but it also confirms a recession, and that's something that nobody wants to come to put a stamp on. But in reality, in my opinion, and first of all, this is not advice or a recommendation. You do your own due diligence. You make your own trades based on your homework and what you've done. I'm just sharing my opinion and ideas. So let's get that cleared off the table. But if we see a move towards 5,000, I think you see a Fed move in interest rates to a lower side. That does not solve any problems from a long-term perspective. It actually creates a situation of stagflation, slowing growth, rising inflation. 1970s, anybody who's been around long enough who went through that period, or at least studied that period, stagflation was big. Paul Volcker came in and raised rates, and we saw federal funds rates up around 15% to squash inflation. That killed the economy. So really, they're in a really crap position, if you ask me, where they have to make these decisions about rates. Best thing, in my opinion, is, we got to reset the system. So we have to reap what we have sown. Let's go check out the NASDAQ 100 as well. We'll go to the daily first. And also another situation of below the 20. The 9 is crossing through the 20 today. That doesn't look like there's much volume or price movement. Basically a candlestick on the lower side of the candlestick presently. To me, this is not super encouraging. MACD is headed south. RSI is below 50. 50 is it strengthening or is it weakening point from my perspective? In the slow stochastic, well, it's down below 20. I'd like to see, if we're going to see this thing move higher, I want to see the slow stochastic break over 50. I want to see the RSI over 50 headed north towards 70. And I want to see this MACD histogram and this situation similar to this situation that we saw back in May and basically the month of May. That's when I see these kind of things and positiveness and above the 20, above the 9, then I see potential movement higher. But right now, this is cautionary. This is where I think you start to review your risk management strategy and how to protect your wealth. Then I get into the weekly charts on the NASDAQ, and we're still above the 9. There are buyers in this area, not a whole lot of them, but there are buyers in this area. We're sitting at the 9 on a weekly basis. Tesla, I believe, comes out this week, and a handful of other tech companies. NASDAQ 100 is heavily littered with tech companies, so something you take into account as well when it comes to when you look at this. So, and then so anyways, if this thing were to go south, you got to look at the 20 at 40, 457. You got to look at the 50 at 418, and then the 200 is 350. If you look from here, October of 23 to the peak in July of this year, July 8th, the week of July 8th, think of it as 30 to 50% retracement kind of rule. If you're a trader and you're trading for a company or a hedge fund institution, your whole number one goal is to make money. If you've been in it since October, you've made a buttload of money, and now you take profits. You take profits all the way into a rise, and then maybe you flip to the other side and start shorting this when you start to break significant levels. Really just something to keep an eye on. All right, let's get into the top 3 companies of the S&P 500. So that's Nvidia. This is a daily chart. I've been putting some posts up on TikTok and some shorts on YouTube and about Nvidia and where we're at. If I'm looking at Nvidia since Thursday, the 11th of July, we have just basically headed south. We had a big drop down from the 16th to the 17th. We have rebounded, but we're now up against that 9-period average, which has moved through the 20 and what we see here is there's a lot of sellers in this area above the 9, so above 127, upwards of 135. This is cautionary to me. So to me, this is where you hit resistance. If we were to bust through the 9 and the 20, you got a lot of potential sellers here. This is resistance. Where is support in this case? Well, there's a lot of support down here around between right around the 200, so right around $77, $80 or so. And so there, to me, there is more, from my perspective, when I look at this, there is more downside in Nvidia versus upside potential. And the question is, what would drive Nvidia higher? Well, one, Federal Reserve lowers interest rates aggressively, puts more money in the system, it pumps up the market, gets the market excited again. You see Nvidia, 150, 175, 200. If they do nothing, and they come out with earnings, which they'll come out with here in the next, maybe next month or so. I don't know exactly when they come out with earnings. But in the earnings below the water out on a short-term basis, I think it goes higher. But at some point, Jensen Yang will guide to caution. And I don't know if that's, if that's why he's selling shares of it. He and a handful of other C-level execs at NVIDIA have been selling shares of their that they own, and so they've been taking profits for the last couple months. There have been really no buyers with insider buying in NVIDIA in the last really year. So I think you possibly are seeing some internal decisions to diversify their portfolios, which, I don't blame them. Why not? So if I look at a weekly chart of this, we are presently this week below the 9. We had a peak above it, but right now we're just right at the 9. If we close below the 9 this week, we could see a continuation on the downside. Your MACD is crossing through to the south. Your RSI still is strong. It looks like it's poking up a little bit today. And your slow stochastic is starting to point downward. This is, to me, on a weekly chart, is I want to see a close above the 9. It gives me confirmation that we could be going higher in the near future. But if we see a close below the 9, I'd be very cautious at this point from a weekly standpoint. All right, let's go check out Meta. Meta is interesting. I wrote a blog post on bestofusinvestors.com about Meta and Google and their dependency on ad revenue and how one company for Meta represents $2 billion last year in advertising dollars, which is pretty darn significant, and how ad revenue is driven by consumer spending, and yet you look at consumer retail spending and it's starting to slow. The cost of goods is starting to slow. So I look at Meta as a potential, this is a cautionary situation because they are so dependent on revenue from consumer spending as well as Google, and they all get their majority of the revenue from ad spend. So right now, Meta in this case, we're seeing some RSI is starting to move up higher, but still below 50. The MACD is still sloping lower, but the histogram is showing it's starting to poke up a little bit. And the slow stochastic is punching through 20. I'd like to see it above, say, 50 or 40 in this case. And to me, that would be an example of, on an oscillator standpoint, of momentum going higher. Now, that's not happening yet, and we're having a challenge here on the 30, or excuse me, on the 50, which is that green, and the 20 represents is also below, the price is below that, and it's still playing around with the 9 as of today. This is really not super exciting to me. I think there's probably more opportunity lower than there is higher right now, but time will tell. And economic changes could change. Like I've said earlier, money changes, the cost of money changes with the Fed lowering rates. That could be a boost to all these high beta, high tech stocks. All right, let's check out Apple real quick. And remind me, somebody asked me about ARM, and I'll go check that out here in a second. But this is daily. This is a daily chart of Apple. And once again, I look at this momentum south through the 9, off the 20. We're holding that. Maybe we start to see some base building here, but MACD is still pointing lower, and MACD is a little slower of an indicator than, say, the slow stochastic. So slow stochastic is going to make a move first, and then the MACD, and you can confirm strength of it through the RSI. And so when I look at the slow stochastic, it's headed south. When I look at the MACD, it's headed south. RSI just sort of sitting there, trailing right above 50 and between 50 and 60. So it's really sort of mediocre when it comes to commitment. A lot of buyers in this area above on a daily chart of Apple, up in the as low as 230. So if we get a movement higher, or a move higher in Apple, there is going to be some resistance here. You got the 9, but also these group of buyer or sellers in this area. Whereas support, probably right around 208 area in this range, right at the bottom of the Bollinger Band. But this all, as we all know, daily can change, so you got to pay attention. On a weekly basis, we're starting to see here, once again, last week was a bad week. This week, sort of mixed bag. I mean, you can't really base the week off 2 days, so let's don't. And so the MACD is still positive. The RSI is positive. Slow stochastic is positive. We're above the 9. So on a weekly chart, we may just have a bit of a consolidation, a correction happening with Apple. And since they're the largest company within the S&P 500, that's in a way that could be some good outlook for the overall S&P 500, but also Apple. But we need to see some positiveness here on the weekly chart. And if I look at consider this, I always think in threes on a daily or weekly. So if I have 3 down days, typically there's an up day on the 4th day. So if we have three weeks of down, I mean, this could be a shallow week this week. Earnings, some of these tech companies are coming out. And if we look here, Apple comes out with their earnings on, come on, show me. So what is that? That's, nope, I don't want that. That comes out on August 1st. They're going to come out with earnings. So that would be next Wednesday or Thursday. So we could have really no price action with Apple for a while and just waiting for confirmation on what Apple's earnings and guidance will be. So we'll see there. Let's go look at Bitcoin since it's very popular kind of thing. Bitcoin, sorry, my charts get all out of whack. Bitcoin has had a pretty nice run since July 12th. And has moved through the 9, through the 200, the 50, and the 20, and has moved higher. Is that the? Let's just confirm something here. Yeah, that the orange line is the 200, and nice swing trade if you were in it. It's now coming down and touching back on the 9. There's resistance right up here around 69,000, and yet we have some upturn in the Bollinger Band, which is positive, and but there is a lot of resistance up in this range, up in the $70,000 range. MACD looks like it's starting to turn over. Today, the histogram is lower than the yesterday, so it's starting to turn over a little bit. RSI is turning over. Slow stochastic really isn't budging all that much. So this could be, and understand Bitcoin trades 24/7. So it's a thanks, Collins. That was really cool of you. Thanks for the compliment. Hope to add value here. But Bitcoin, it moves fast. It can whiplash you, and I think that's where you have to have that technical analysis process built in. If you're a swing trader and you follow Mark's swing trading process, you would have picked this up, right around 59,000, and you would start looking at a exit right around a couple days ago, or just in this area. If we break the 9, there's a good chance we'll head to the 20 again. So that, think of it as a retracement of anywhere between 30 and 50%. So that's a daily. Check out a weekly. Sort of interesting. Above the 20, above the 9. It'd be really cool if we saw a move through It'd be real cool if the 9 moved through the 20. And we had a movement up, and we had these Bollinger Bands sort of span out, and that would mean things are going higher, which easily could be happening. MACD still is in a downward slope, so that's cautionary. The RSI is in a downward slope, yet the slow stochastic is pointing up. It's a whole mixed bag from a weekly standpoint, so you just keep in mind this looks like resistance in this whole area around 71, going all the way back to March 11th. So this could be a base building period. This is a weekly chart, remember, and you saw base building here, back in this period of time from June of 23 to October of 23. Base building, explosion, upward. Could this be a base building period? Possibly. Keep an eye on it. But think of it as this, if you're, say, a $2 billion hedge fund or family private office, you accumulate assets, or you accumulate positions over time. So you buy, you make a little money, peel off a little bit, let it come back down, buy a little bit more, and you just build a position over time. And that's what these base building positions to me looks like. So could we see 80,000 on Bitcoin in the coming months? Possibly. You have a very pro candidate for president, both the vice president, vice president nominee, J.D. Vance, and Trump are actually going to be at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville this week. So they're pro this, so that could be good for the crypto industry if they were to be elected. That is to be seen, but we'll see. But from that standpoint, pretty cool looking. ARM. Somebody wanted me to touch on ARM as a chart. Let me pull it up here. All right, this is ARM Holdings. It is presently, let's go to the daily, start there. And I'm just looking at this as you are looking at this. So Purchasers right in this area, going back to, was that June 24th, purchasing, move higher, take some profits, bring it back down, purchasing. Now we're sitting at the 20, we're sitting at the 9. The 9 is crossing, it looks like it's crossing through. If we see a close in arm on a day chart here today below the 9 and below the 20, cautionary, just watch what you're doing, just keep an eye on it. Bollinger Bands are tightening up. This could get really interesting as they widen out and the momentum is moving higher. That would be very positive for ARM. The MACD broke south, was right around the 15th of July. It is turning up. We're seeing the histogram make a turn higher. And what we want to see is that we get confirmation on the majority of our indicators before we make a buy or sell decision. Here, the RSI above 50, I like that. Looks like it's about to cross over the trend line there of 60. Hopefully, if we see that, another confirmation of positive momentum in ARM. Slow stochastic hasn't turned. Remember, slow stochastic will turn first versus the MACD, who will turn second. Okay, MACD is a slower oscillator versus the slow stochastic. So if we see a move here above 40 on the slow stochastic, I'd be stoked about it. That would mean MACD is right behind it. RSI would probably be a positive as well. And we would probably be above the 20 and 9. But that's a what if, and we could play with that all day long and just sort of tease ourselves. But in my opinion, just wait for your indicators that you're using to become majority positive or negative before making that purchase. And then, of course, you look at the weekly chart in this case, and we're hovering on the 9. Boom, hit the 9 last week. Closed upward, closed down for the week, but we closed off the 9, which is positive. We're presently above the 9 now. If we were to close right now, we'd be closing on the higher end of that, which is cool. And then we have your MACD, which is, in my opinion, on a weekly chart, sort of flat. It's a positive, but it's flat. And then you got RSI is positive, and your slow stochastic is very positive, but it's sort of rounding. So we got to wait and see. Here's the big deal, though. On a weekly chart, earnings come out on Wednesday of next week. So how do you play this? Well, some people buy into earnings, which into my opinion is a bit of speculation. And if you're willing to take that, sorry, I got distracted by Colin's post here. I'll read it here in just a second. But if going into earnings can be a big hero moment. I think AEHR had a big hero moment last week on earnings, or it can be just a bloodbath. And so you have to look at how much risk are you risking if you ride it into or buy into earnings, or how you do it. It's really just how much can you lose? Take care of your losers. Take care of the losses before you take, and the upside will take care of itself. All right. So Colin asks, shift into small caps. Does this include biotech stocks? Your opinion. Thanks. Let's check out biotech. And I think it's, what's XLV? Is that the ETF? No, that's healthcare. We'll just pull that up while I try to figure this. As you can see, healthcare really sideways for a while. That's a weekly chart of it. MACD is just sort of flatlining. Positive on the RSI. Upper end of the slow stochastic, which is cool. So on a weekly chart, that looks good. That's healthcare. Hey, Colin, do you know what biotech ETF is? If you could post that in the chat, and we'll take a look at that. On a daily chart of the healthcare ETF, XLV, basically we're riding that above the 9, which is positive, above the 20. We've got we had a pullback 3 days ago. Probably that was Thursday of last week, pretty significant. But we have once again continued to close above the 9. there. Let's take a look at IWM while we're figuring out what the Biotech ETF is. And so this is a daily of the Russell 2000 ETF. Last week, or well, going back to the 10th of July, we had that rotation kind of situation happening out of high beta tech, AI, so Nvidia kind of situation. We had to jump up. We blew through this resistance level on the 12th. I didn't blow through it, but you understand what I'm saying. And we have had a movement higher. So we had one, two, three, 4 big days. Take profits, consolidate. 1, 2, 3. Now we're at the 9. Now we're moving back up. 1, 2. Okay, edit says Chris Roth. We'll check those out. Cool. And so what this says to me is the MACD is up, the RSI is strong. Slow stochastic, though, is indicating a slowing down. That's semi-concerning. But we're above the 9, above the 20, above 200. So this is, to me, there's probably resistance up in this area, right around 224. But if we can get through that, that could be a real positive for IWM. Let's check out editors. AEDIT. Okay. This is Biotech Med Company. Squeeze this shit up. And sorry for my language, but that's just who I am. Below the 200. Cautionary. MACD pulled back a little bit, but it still looks like it may be pushing a little bit higher. Positive on the RSI. It's encouraging. Slow stochastic, though, is pointing down. Let's look at this, sort of blow this up a little bit more so we could get a better view. Today we're above the 9. If we close above the 9, that's positive. There is some resistance here. That is concerning. You got earnings on the 31st, Wednesday the 31st. So you could see a move higher into this potential resistance area. So like I said, as you come into earnings, you don't know. It really comes down to that. My feeling is this thing has been moving sideways since April 25th. Consolidation, up run, make some profits, take it back, and just base building in a sense here. Had a little bit of a pullback right around the 26th of June, but we had to move back up, and we're in that consolidation, or what I would call accumulation period, and it's coming into earnings. So could it be a move higher towards the 200? Possibly. I wouldn't bet the farm on it. Wouldn't write a letter to my mother about it and say, hey, you should check this out at this point. But if Edisys could break the 200, let's look at a weekly. You can see it here. This is the 20 week moving average. And this is that, and the 9 has been its nemesis. If we see the 20 continue to go south, this is going to be the wall that Edisys is running against, from my opinion. MACD, that's cool. Sort of a break this week above, or last week, and into this week it's breaking above. That's encouraging. RSI, it's inching up, still at 44.37. But on the slow stochastic, it's the leader of the MACD. It's up. So I guess what I would look at, Colin, is I would say I don't know. What I want to know is I want this price to be above here, and that's 1172 on a weekly chart. Because all of a sudden, I've just changed all of this momentum that has been going down since August of 22. If that changes momentum, then there's a good chance we move higher. And then you got, past resistance level back here in 22. If you transfer that over, that could be a resistance level. But to get this thing to here, which would be 21 on the weekly, on the 200, it would be $21 on the 200 weekly moving average. There's a big possibility. It really comes down to one thing, and that is earnings, revenue, and guidance. Really, guidance, if you ask me. If they say our business looks good for the coming quarters, then I think you got a chance. But just be cautious. Okay, let's check out two more. CRISPR, I know that's oftentimes a subject on some of the Kerry's calls. That's not it. Let's see, CRSPR. That's not it. Here we go. Okay. A lot of sidewaysness here, right? I think we all see a little sideways movement here. I want to see a move above the 200. This is a daily chart. I want to correct. Let's see if I can actually draw a line here. Let's see. If I go from here to here, and I make it so you can actually see it, I want to see a break through that. That's a break through the 200. That's a break against this downward trend we have seen since 22. And now we get to some fresh air. If we get into this like 68 and above, we start to get some fresh air, and that's what keeps things alive, is fresh air. You got earnings on Monday the 29th, so next week. That's the big deal. Are they going to come out and say something significant? And really, is their guidance going to say, hey, we're in the game, you need to be a part of it? Or is it, well, it's okay? That is what I'd be really looking for. And then I would want confirmation above that 200 before I started going, hey, this is a place I want to be. Let's look at one more twist. Well, that's not it. There it is, TWST. All right, well, that's pretty cool. First thing what do you see? I see resistance in this area. Okay, so, but I'm above the 9, above the 20. My MACD's positive and looking like the histogram is moving higher over time. RSI is positive, slow stochastic, a little bit of turn today, but I want to see a move into this resistance area, and I want to see a move through it. And earnings are on. Let's move this over so I don't click something else. On August 2nd, so that could be a determiner of what this is going to do. Let's look at it. Here you had move higher through the 9, through the 20, back on the 3rd of June. Big 1, 2, 3, profit taking, consolidation, possibly share accumulation. Looks like share accumulation. Move higher through the 9 and the 20. Up, consolidate, take some profits. Back down to the 9. We're on that 9 and it's holding. That's pretty cool. That's exciting. So this period from today until the 2nd, that's a risk area. That is where you check yourself and say, am I confident in the fundamentals that they're advancing? They're going to guide higher. Their earnings per share, revenues, those are going to be positive. They're going to be, and will that positiveness looking forward push this higher? Very good possibility. To me, it looks like there's possible belief that could actually happen. But check yourself, check your risk, because it could easily come out and say, you know what, we botched it, and the thing could, fall like we have seen in the past. All right. Double bottom forming in this area, possibly. This period of time, earnings season, to me is like crazy because you just don't know. You don't know what these companies are going to come out with. The fact they can come within a penny of estimates is suspect. And I've always believed that. And so I don't know. I think I don't know. So as we are coming in this earnings season, especially with these high flyers, just be cautious. Check yourself. If you got a crap load of profits in a position, ask yourself, would I be pissed at myself if they came out with earnings, they missed, or they guided lower, or somebody said something bad, like an earnings report? Would I be upset if I lost 5, 10, 15, 20% of my position? And I would. And so that's why you got to be cautious. If you've got profits, not a problem to take it. It's not a bad thing. But I think overall, I think it's, I don't know. It's interesting. But this is where you be cautious. You find opportunities. There's always an opportunity out there. So you go from there with it. But anyhow, that's my take this afternoon. Wow, I've been rattling on for 40 minutes. I really appreciate y'all. And Colin, thank you for the questions and comments. I love it. And I hope to do this very frequently throughout the week, each week, and go from there. So check us out at Best of US Investors. If you're not a subscriber, hit the like button. Please share this. In the comments, please share your comments. Please be nice to each other. I appreciate if you're nice to me. Don't tell me you're going to come find me and kill me like somebody has done recently with Kerry, which is stupid. But be cool. And hey, opportunity out there. Let's look for it. Anyways, have a great afternoon. Hopefully the market will close in your direction today and your positions will close in your direction. In the meantime, live loud. Peace. And I'll try to figure out how to shut this off. See you.